様、こんにちは。三浦里奈です。
木原隆一です。今日は映画号7月号でブルガリの素敵なジュエリーをつけて撮影をしました。
普段アクセサリーをつけることが誰ともないので、すごく新鮮で楽しく撮影になりました。
本当にジュエリーをつけるってことは普段の生活じゃないんですけど、本当に素敵な経験をさせていただきました。ありがとうございました。
ぜひ家庭画報7月号をご覧ください。
What if I told you that one of the most important moments in the history of Japanese figure skating did not happen at the Olympics, did not happen at the World Championships, and did not happen in front of thousands of cheering fans? What if the moment that changed everything happened in complete silence on an ordinary morning? No cameras, no reporters, no medals, just a car waiting outside a house before sunrise. For 7 years, a routine so simple that almost nobody noticed it quietly became the foundation of one of the greatest partnerships in figure skating history. The story of Olympic champions is usually told through dramatic victories and unforgettable performances. People remember the standing ovations. They remember the gold medals. They remember the emotional moments on the podium. But championships are rarely built in those moments. They are built in the thousands of invisible moments that come before them. And for Riku Miura and Ryuichi Kihara, one of those invisible moments happened almost every morning. To understand why that routine mattered so much, we have to go back to 2019. At that time, neither of them could have imagined what the future would hold. There was no Olympic gold medal waiting around the corner. There was no guarantee that their partnership would even work. There was only uncertainty. The two skaters had recently formed a new pair, and like every newly formed partnership, they faced enormous challenges. Pair skating is unlike almost any other sport. Success depends on trust, not just trust during competition, not just trust during practice. Complete trust. The kind of trust that exists when one athlete lifts another several feet above the ice. The kind of trust that exists when one mistake can lead to serious injury. The kind of trust that cannot be built overnight. And yet that was exactly what they needed to create. When they moved toward training in Canada under coach Bruno Marcotte, everything changed. Suddenly they were far from home, far from family, far from familiar surroundings. For many athletes, moving abroad sounds exciting. The reality is often much harder. New culture, new language, new expectations, new pressures. Every day becomes a challenge. Even simple things can feel overwhelming. And in those early days, one particular challenge quietly shaped their lives: transportation. It sounds almost too ordinary to matter, but sometimes the smallest details become the most important. Back then, Riku did not drive. Getting to practice was not always easy. The rink was waiting. The coaches were waiting. The training schedule was waiting. And every morning, someone needed to make sure she got there. That someone was Ryuichi. Morning after morning, before most people were awake, he would begin his day. The streets were quiet. The sky was still dark. The world seemed asleep. But while everyone else rested, the foundation of a championship partnership was already being built. He would drive to pick her up. Then they would head toward the rink. No reporters followed them. No cameras documented the journey. Yet those drives became one of the most important classrooms in their entire career. Because championships are not only built on the ice. They are built in conversations. They are built in shared struggles. They are built in ordinary moments. Imagine spending years training alongside the same person every day. Now imagine beginning and ending many of those days together. Eventually something changes. You begin to understand each other in ways that cannot be taught. You notice moods without words. You recognize stress before it is spoken aloud. You learn how the other person thinks. And that understanding becomes priceless. The drives were never just transportation. They became part of the partnership itself. Some mornings were filled with conversation. Other mornings were quiet. Some days they talked about skating. Some days they talked about life. Some days they simply watched the world pass by through the car windows. Yet every morning added another layer to the trust between them, and trust is everything in pair skating. The public usually sees the spectacular moments, the lifts, the throws, the twists, the dramatic finishes. But what makes those moments possible? Trust. Every successful lift begins long before the athlete leaves the ice. It begins when two people learn to rely on each other completely. That process was happening every morning, day after day, month after month, year after year. Then came setbacks. Every great sports story has them, and theirs had more than most. There were injuries, pain, disappointment, moments when progress seemed impossible. One of the most difficult moments came when Riku suffered a shoulder dislocation. For pair skaters, shoulder injuries are terrifying. Every lift suddenly feels uncertain. Every movement carries risk. The physical pain is obvious. The emotional impact is often worse. Athletes begin questioning themselves. Can I still do this? Will I recover? Will I ever feel confident again? Those questions can be overwhelming. But during those difficult times, the morning routine continued. The car still arrived. The journey still happened. The commitment remained unchanged. And that consistency mattered, because consistency creates stability. When athletes face uncertainty, familiar routines become anchors. They remind you who you are, they remind you where you are going, and they remind you that you are not facing challenges alone. Years later, another major obstacle arrived. This time it was Ryuichi dealing with injury struggles. Training schedules changed. Competitions were missed. Recovery became the priority. Once again, uncertainty entered their lives. For elite athletes, injuries are not only physical battles, they are emotional battles. The hardest part is often feeling disconnected from the thing you love most. For someone who spends every day training, suddenly stopping can feel unbearable. Yet even then, the partnership endured. The same support that had grown through years of ordinary mornings became invaluable, because by that point, they were no longer just teammates. They were people who genuinely understood what the other was experiencing. That understanding cannot be created overnight. It takes years. It takes shared experiences. It takes thousands of moments nobody sees. The world eventually began noticing the results. Competition after competition, they improved. They grew stronger, more confident, more synchronized. Their performances gained a new level of maturity. The timing became sharper. The trust became visible. Fans saw the results. But few understood where much of that connection came from. It came from years of showing up, years of consistency, years of commitment to each other and to the process. Eventually, they achieved something that once seemed impossible. They became one of the best pair teams in the world. International success followed. Major medals followed. Historic achievements followed. Japan watched proudly as the pair continued making history. Yet through all the success, the heart of the story remained surprisingly simple. Every great achievement was built on ordinary days. That truth often gets lost in sports. People love dramatic moments, but greatness is usually repetitive. Greatness looks like waking up early. Greatness looks like showing up when nobody is watching. Greatness looks like doing the same thing again and again because you believe it matters. And that was exactly what happened here. Then came the moment that changed everything. The 2026 Winter Olympics. For years, they had worked toward this goal. For years, they had sacrificed. For years, they had trusted the process. Now the biggest stage in sport stood before them. The pressure was enormous. Millions were watching. History was waiting. When they stepped onto the ice, they carried more than their own dreams. They carried the hopes of a nation. Every practice session, every injury, every setback, every morning drive, everything had led to this moment. The performance that followed became part of figure skating history. They delivered when it mattered most. Skill, precision, trust, emotion, everything came together. And when the competition ended, they stood at the top. Olympic champions, the first Japanese pair team to achieve that incredible milestone. The world saw the medal. The world saw the tears. The world saw the celebration. But what the world did not see was the journey hidden inside that victory. Because Olympic gold was not won in a single performance. It was won through years of preparation, years of sacrifice, years of trust, years of ordinary mornings. Think about that for a moment. Some of the most important moments in life do not feel important while they are happening. A car ride, a conversation, a routine, a commitment. At the time, they seem ordinary. Only later do we realize they were shaping our future. That is what makes this story so powerful. It reminds us that greatness rarely arrives all at once. It arrives little by little, one day at a time, one decision at a time, one morning at a time. For 7 years, they kept showing up, not because success was guaranteed, not because they knew exactly what would happen, but because they believed in the journey. And eventually, that belief changed everything. There is another lesson hidden inside this story. Success is rarely an individual achievement. Even in sports where one person stands on the podium, there are always people behind the scenes. Coaches, families, friends, teammates, partners, no one reaches the top alone. Riku and Ryuichi's story demonstrates that beautifully. Their success was built together. Every challenge was faced together. Every setback was endured together. Every victory was celebrated together. That is why their partnership resonated with so many people around the world. Fans did not just see talented athletes, they saw trust, they saw loyalty, they saw commitment. They saw two people choosing to move forward together no matter what obstacles appeared in front of them. And perhaps that is why their story feels bigger than sports, because everyone understands the value of having someone who believes in you. Everyone understands the comfort of knowing someone will show up. Everyone understands the power of consistency. That simple morning routine became a symbol of all those things. It was never really about the drive. It was about reliability. It was about support. It was about trust. Those qualities eventually became visible on Olympic ice. When Ryuichi lifted Riku high above the rink under the brightest lights in the world, fans saw confidence. What they did not see were the years that built that confidence. The early mornings, the difficult conversations. The setbacks, the persistence, the routine, that is the hidden story behind the gold medal. And perhaps that is the real reason this story matters. Because most people watching this video are not Olympic athletes. Most people are not training for world championships. But everyone has dreams, everyone has goals, everyone has moments when progress feels slow. And during those moments, it is easy to believe that nothing is happening. It is easy to believe that ordinary days do not matter. This story proves otherwise. Ordinary days matter more than we realize. The habits we repeat become the lives we create. The routines we protect shape our future. The small actions nobody notices eventually become impossible to ignore. 7 years of ordinary mornings helped create Olympic champions, not because each morning was extraordinary, but because they kept showing up, again and again and again, until history finally noticed. And that is why the morning routine that changed their careers forever was never really about transportation. It was about trust. It was about commitment. It was about believing in a dream long before anyone else could see it. And in the end, that simple routine helped carry two skaters all the way to the top of the world.